Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, we're going to be looking at a card that I'm excited about. It's a new Delphox card, and the reason I'm excited, first of all, is I like Delphox. Of all of the first partner Pokemon we've had in all of the generations, Delphox is one of my very favourites. So whenever we get a new Delphox card, there is always a little tingle of excitement. The question is it actually any good? Well, like with all of these things, ladies and gentlemen, I made a video to discuss exactly that. Now, being a fire Pokemon means it does get access to Scorched Earth, at least for the time being. That stadium, that means you can discard a fire energy and then you can draw an extra 2 cards. That's always good. And you do get, this non-EX or baby Volcanion, hey Nick, that you can use to accelerate energy, which is nice, not to mention the fact that you also get Kiawe to accelerate energy, which is also really nice. One of the issues is, of course, that you do not get Volcanion EX. Well, I mean, you can play Volcanion EX, but you don't have access to that Steam Up ability to add 30 damage to your attacks. That only works for basic Pokemon, and unfortunately, Delphox is not a basic Pokemon. Retreat cost of 2 is the worst retreat cost in the game, which is upsetting, but there's nothing we can do about it. And weakness to water isn't the worst weakness around at the moment, but Greninja could be a bit of an issue. And as I've said in a couple of videos lately, I do expect the new Glaceon to be good. I do expect the new Empoleon to be good. And that means that actually this weakness to water could be a bit of a pain. Hitting as a fire type with weakness, however, is quite nice. It means that Golisopod GX will go down straight away, and there's all kinds of cool metal Pokemon now that will be taken out very easily with your fire type Pokemon. But as of all of these, ladies and gentlemen, it is the attack that we're really worried about. And, well, we've actually got an ability first. So if we look at the ability, first of all, this is very nice. Once during your turn, you may burn your opponent's active Pokemon. It is one of these where it's just automatic burn whenever you feel like it, and the new burn rules are really nice for this. The new burn rules say that between turns, if you're burned, you take 20 damage, 2 damage counters, and you flip a coin. If heads, you're no longer burned. If tails, you're still burned. Which means that this ability will do absolute minimum 20 damage. Now that is absolute minimum 20 damage. If they flip a tails, they then have to get out the active, or they take 2 damage counters after their turn. And then 2 damage counters after your turn. They can always try and get out of the active in their turn. Maybe they just retreat. Maybe they play something like an Ace Roller, for instance. And of course, they could always flip heads on burn, which would mean that they would no longer be burned and they wouldn't be taking the damage. Worst case scenario, they take 2 damage counters and will Feather Arrow. Feather Arrow did 2 damage counters in an ability on a stage 2. Now, to be fair, you could use multiple Decidueye to do this multiple times, whereas this is just a once per turn kind of thing. And similarly, Decidueye could hit any Pokemon on the field. This really does only hit the active. You cannot just burn a bench Pokemon for funsies. So it's not the same as Feather Arrow. I'm not going to pretend it's the same as Feather Arrow. What I am going to pretend is, and by pretend I mean state with some level of certainty, that this ability that gives special conditions is good. And that an ability that does extra damage is good. And that this could be very useful. Doing extra damage, as I've said in many videos over the past couple of years, is always good. Why does Choice Band see so much play? Because it does extra damage. I could keep going. The Pokemon trading card game is littered with examples of doing extra damage and how that is borderline broken. I mean, one great example of this was Crobat G back in the day. People would play one copy of Crobat G, they'd play it with Poker Turn, which was an item card that they could use to pick up and put it back down again, because you could put 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon every time you put it on the field. Doing extra damage is always good. The problem is you can only do it to the active, and it is on a stage 2 Pokemon, which is a little bit of an issue here. But then again, it might not just be 20 extra damage. It might be 2 extra damage counters after your turn, then 2 after theirs, then 2 after yours, and so on and so forth. This could actually add up very quickly. Now, there is an obvious combo here that I don't actually think I can wholeheartedly recommend because it is incredibly clunky, but I've got to mention the new Infernate from Ultra Prism. The new Infernate from Ultra Prism has an ability that says that if your opponent's Pokemon is burned, they take 6 damage counters between turns rather than 2. So you can use Delphox to burn here, and then use Infernate so they take 6 damage counters between turns, 6 after your turn, 6 after their turn, and so on and so forth. Just to be completely clear, you can't do this. I've made this point before, but I'll make it again. Multiple Stage 2 decks do not work. The only example is where you've got something like Magnezone Prime, where one of your Stage 2 decks has a built-in consistency, a built-in draw engine. Otherwise, multiple Stage 2 decks don't work. So as much as there is a fun and fairly obvious combo here between Infernape and this new Delphox, no, ladies and gentlemen, no. And this is a good ability. There is no question, I believe, that this is a good ability, and I think anyone that argues this isn't a good ability is probably missing my point. If this ability was on a basic Pokemon, it would guaranteed see play. The ability is great. The issue here is it on a Pokemon that you can use with an appropriate amount of resources? And that is where I think the issue comes in. If you could have a basic Pokemon that could just burn your opponent's active every turn, I guarantee it would see play in a majority of decks. Unfortunately, that's not what this is. It's on a Stage 2, that makes it awkward. But if there's a really good attack here, that could really salvage the card, and it's alright. 2 fire, 2 colourless, 150 damage, discard 2. The good news is you can use double colourless energy to pay the attack cost, and the good news is because it is discard 2 energy, rather than discard 2 fighting energy, and you can see there on the text of the card there is no fire energy symbol, which means that you can discard any energy here. It means you can actually discard double colourless, then the next turn attach double colourless, use it to pay, and then use it as the discard. And of course, 150 is quite a good number. You add Choice Band and you're hitting 180, which will get stuff like Tapu Lele and like Drampa GX, which is seeing a bit of a comeback in the metagame at the moment. But it's for 4 energy. I mean, you can always use Kiawe, but it's for 4 energy. On a Stage 2, this is the big problem with Delphox. It's not quite good enough to justify being a Stage 2. The ability's great, but maybe not quite good enough for a Stage 2. And the attack is quite good. It certainly does a fair amount of damage, but on a Stage 2 is a bit of an issue. For 4 energy is a bit of an issue. And that's what we keep coming back to. The good news is, especially in Expanded, we've got some decent options for Delphox. We've got the one from X and Y, which does have a built-in draw engine. It is, funnily enough, the same draw engine as Magnezone. Draw till you've got 6 cards in your hand. Then you've got the one from Fates Collide, which has got the really nice Size Storm ability. 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to all Pokemon in play, which is quite nice, not to mention the ability Flare Witch on Delphox Break, which says that once during your turn, you can search your deck for a fire energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. This is quite nice, but I still think we're in the situation that Delphox has been in for a while. There's a lot of different options here, but they're not quite good enough to justify the setup. I like all of these Delphox, but the reality is Delphox is a nice little niche deck, a nice little rogue deck right now. It's not a powerhouse deck. In that deck, this Delphox would be pretty cool. But is anyone really going to tech this Stage 2 into their deck to do a bit of extra damage with burn? I'm not entirely convinced they will. If it was like in the video game and burn also reduced the amount of damage that you did, oh my goodness, yes. but it doesn't. I'm going to give Delphox a nice solid, ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill, garden variety, standard, free wassies. Because I think it's a useful ability. I think you should have a couple copies of Delphox in your binder, just in case, but I do think it's a little bit too much investment, and that makes me sad. But that's where we are. Another interesting Delphox that might just not quite be good enough to warrant the investment. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. Tell me what you think about this card. Go nuts. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and so on, you can do so by going to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.